Coming to you from Studio HQ, this is Thinking the Extra. I've got an amazing guest with me today, which I'm really excited about. Before I jump in and ask my guests these questions, I'll talk about our sponsors. Are you an aspiring creator but don't have the tools? Look no further than Thermon Comic Creations. If distance is an issue, that is not an issue, as all courses can be held via Zoom and basically other digital devices. So jump on to thermontcomiccreations.com. And also, Think Indie would like to also mention on the 1st of October is Buy Indie Comics Day. If you're a creator like my guest here today, reach out to your local comic book store, make it an event, celebrate local creators. It's Artist Alley in your local comic book store. And with me today is the creator of probably one of the more obscure independent comics, coming all the way from Canada, Captain Canuck. The creator is Richard Comley. Welcome.
Well, I'm happy to be here. And in Canada and the in Canada and in many parts of the United States, it's pronounced Captain Canuck. But
Canuck. Okay.
yes, now that's here. Now in Australia, I have no idea. So
Well, I mean, I appreciate the correction because no one has ever corrected me, and I do bring that name up to a lot of American creators, so no one has corrected me. So I do appreciate that, Captain Canuck.
yeah, yeah,
I
I've
learned
been in the
something.
States. Years
Mm,
ago, I remember being at a Comic Con in Philadelphia, and there
mhm.
was a lot of people from further south, and they were pronouncing it Captain Canuck. So, and
Okay.
I didn't correct anybody. I mean,
Hmm.
they got all kinds of funny accents down there. So, you know,
Well, don't we all? Depends. You go to the east and west coast of Australia, we sound like from different worlds. So yeah, I
really,
totally. Yeah.
I was going to ask that question if the accent varied in Australia, and they do. You're saying they do, right?
Yes, they do. Yes, I
Wow.
mean, you've watched Crocodile Dundee.
Yeah.
I mean, his accent is a little bit exaggerated for the audience because he is basically the man from the bush. Someone
Okay.
like that, and then you do get people like that, that speak with that higher exaggerate. No, I wouldn't really call it exaggerated accent, but it just sounds different.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then if you get people from from the east side, which is more of the metropolitan city life, you will get some people with the more vowels, because that's the thing. Unlike America, that exaggerate the R's, the vowels are what you hear, like "g'day."
Oh yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah, you get the
Yeah.
exaggerated vowels. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
oh, yeah. So I guess you learned something too.
Well, I was born in England, but I was very young when my parents came here, and I was within a year. I'm sure I sounded like all the other kids in school, kind of
Yeah,
thing. And
that's right.
so
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I mean, so tell me about, obviously you grew up in the UK, you moved to Canada when you were quite young, and then
yeah.
you got into as a commercial artist, and from what I'm reading here, you really didn't read much comics before you created Captain Canuck. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
I should also emphasize I was two, not quite three when we came to Canada. So,
Hmm.
other than my parents' indoctrination, I was pretty Canadian, and but
Hmm.
so yes, I worked right out of high school. I worked as a crest designer, and while I was in high school, I was a sign painter, and I did I did the odd painting here and there. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And it was so the what happened was in I believe it was late '71 or early '72. I met Ron Leishman, a good friend, who lives in
Hmm.
Calgary. He lives in Calgary, Alberta, which is in the western part of Canada, and I'm in Ontario, so we're a ways apart. But
Hmm.
we used, I met him at church, and we used to get together. And he was a cartoonist,
Hmm.
and and tunaday.com is his website, and it's a really fun site to visit. And you can
Okay.
sign up and get free cartoons sent via email to you every week.
Oh
And
wow.
yeah, free. And then
It,
what he does is he does custom cartoons, and he does
mhm,
and people will. I think all he does now is sell. He sells collections,
mhm.
and you can get custom work done too. But over here, and I wouldn't be surprised if I would see, if I was in Australia, I'd see some of his work on a sign, on a poster, on a,
Oh
you
wow.
know, yeah, it's all over the place. We've driven all over the place, and we stop and say, "That's Ron." I can spot it a mile away. That's Ron's cartoon right there. You know what I mean? He's got a fairly distinct style. You know what I mean? And so,
Yeah.
anyways, that's Ron. So it was, if it wouldn't have been for Ron, I wouldn't have gone on this venture. Ron
Mhm.
said to me when we started meeting, he said there should be a Canadian superhero and there should be a comic book series. And we talked about it for a couple of years. Um, and then I finally started to do something about it. I started to, explore and research things like distribution and printing and the publishing and the ad sales and blah blah blah. Because I knew, if I were going to make this work, I needed sources of income to make it float. And then that's when I really started looking at comic books. I mean, I had looked at
Mhm.
comic books before then, but now I was really looking at comic books. So
Yeah. Because if you look at Alpha Flight, that was released in 1979. That was like probably one of the first. But your books exceeded that by about 4 years. So in
yeah.
it just tell us about the initial creation, because then you decided to make the comic book and you were assigned as the artist and colorist and everything else. And I mean, I really, really love the cover because it's so iconic. We can see it
It
right
is.
here. It's
Yeah.
um what did it look like when you actually created the character? Like, was there a special design, or where did you look for inspiration?
Well, Ron Ron doesn't draw this style.
Mhm,
But he did come up with a costume which is pretty. The costume I've got there is pretty close to what Ron designed, Ron Leishman, and we tweaked it. It's been changed over the years, and it would, we George Freeman when he came along, he tweaked it, and then there's been some
mhm,
more changes to the costume. But at the beginning we had no story, no story ideas. All we knew is he needed to be a Canadian superhero. And
of course.
the other thing that we hadn't totally decided on until 1973. So a year or two after we started talking about it, uh, we were still bound. Should it be Captain Canada or should it be Captain Canuck? And
Mhm,
I saw a few Captain Canadas versions of Captain Canadas, and some of them are really goofy. One was had moose horns, and so I I just said, well, I said to Ron, it's going to be Captain Canuck because Captain Canada is already being used, and it's been used in ways that it's kind of diluted the whole, what
yeah.
we want to do with it. And I didn't actually start working on the story, on the characters, and the final art until late 1974. So all that
Mhm,
time prior to that, I'm doing a whole bunch of doing a lot of promotion, seeing printers. We had to come up with a better method of coloring.
mhm,
And the hardest part of the whole job for me was coming up with a story and the character development and the art and the final artwork, etc. So you know I think like a lot of people, I was doing all the stuff that was seemed easier and leaving the harder stuff till as late as I could. And then,
yes, yes.
so anyways, but yeah, as
Mhm,
far as inspiration, like I said, I was looking at a lot of comic books, um, a lot of different artists. Um, Joe Kubert was an artist I remember really looking at a lot, even though my
mhm,
art style isn't like his. but I really liked him, and an artist by the name of Nestor Redondo, who was Philip from the Philippines, amazing artist.
Yes, yes, yes,
Sure.
yes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
He's long dead, you know what I mean? But I
Uh,
communicated with him many years ago before he died. So
oh, that's nice. And well, what was that communication about? Was that more like just talking about how he inspired
no,
you?
not at all. I didn't. I got. I did another magazine called Star Rider and the Peace Machine,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a black and white magazine, very much like the Warren magazines of the late '70s, early '80s, and and it was more magazine size. And
Yeah.
so I, I had 4 series running in the magazine, and I contacted Nestor Redondo's studio, and to see if I could get some Filipinos artists to do some of the work, and because they were a little more reasonable in their rates, and they did beautiful, beautiful work.
Oh,
So,
yes, he did.
oh my goodness, yeah, I met
Mm-hmm.
some of them later on in California. I was in California with a friend, an artist by the name of Rick Estrada, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and I did a video called "Drawing from the Pros," and I shot some of it, interviews down in at Hanna Barbera, back in the late 1990s, and so there were the few comic book artists that I interviewed for that tape, and there was other animators, and Rick Estrada was one of the artists, and so yeah. But yeah, and that's where I met some of the Filipino artists. They had come over to work in animation,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, I was, and Alex Nino, and he's still. I understand he's still alive, but he worked for Disney for a while, and he was also, and still is, as far as I know, an amazing artist. I interviewed him for my video, and a very humble, small man. While I interviewed him, he drew, and it was just. I don't even know if he had his eyes open. He just so
Oh,
it's just
wow.
so natural with him. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
because he's just so involved. That's so
yeah.
good. And and look, and our show is mainly about like pros and cons for comic book creators. So, how important do you think networking is for creators?
Well, I think it's important. It's very different now than it was way back then. For one
Mm-hmm.
thing, um, the distribution back then was all mass market distribution, like to drugstores and convenience stores and
Yeah.
even department stores, etc. And that was that was almost the only means of distribution. There were a few comic book stores in Canada and a few more in the States, but there was no direct market sales as yet. That was soon coming. And
Yes.
for example, I lived in Winnipeg, fair sized city. It had a comic book store, and there was maybe one in Vancouver and one in Toronto, or maybe there was 5 in all of Canada. You know what I mean at that time. So um, I worked with a distributor. As far as networking, that was of course via telephone and and the written word on a piece of paper. So
What?
yeah. So it with the internet and
Mm-hmm.
cell phones, smartphones, and I mean it's pretty different nowadays. I mean if I were to do Captain Canuck today, let's say it had never been done, I would be approaching it
Mm-hmm.
quite differently. I'd probably have a website right away. I might be first publishing it on the internet first. There's different ways to do it. I think what might be I've seen this work for some people where they basically publish it online and then after a while collect what they published into a printed book,
Mm-hmm.
and that's worked well for some people, both with illustrated narrative and even with just prose. Uh, prose
Yeah,
books.
true. So we could looking back at this image here of when you started to create the book. How did it feel when you actually saw it hit the drugstores, hit the convenience stores? What was your initial feeling at the time?
Well, it was a lot of work. I had a lot of help, like from the printer, from especially from the engraver. Now they don't use that term anymore, but to get the color separations, we came up with a better method than what the Americans were using. And that
Mhm,
was, we would do the black and white art just the way as everybody else did it. But we would put a sheet of acetate over top of that artwork. And then using the same paint that animators use, we would add the color. And the advantage of that was we could, any color we wanted, we could grade 8 tones, we could have effects, etc. Couldn't do that with the photomask system that the Americans were using. And
mhm.
so that we stood out right away because of that. And
Yeah.
so it came out in May of 1975. The first issue is dated July, but
Mhm.
it first came. It was distributed right across Canada, so every store got it, and the few comic book stores, at least the one in Winnipeg, got it. In fact, I found out later. I mean, he ordered a few thousand copies, and people literally lined up around the block, to buy it. And I wasn't there. I didn't hear about it until afterwards. Um, and there was so it. I think my timing was really good for
Mhm.
releasing it. Uh, I had tremendous media coverage, probably unprecedented. Like all the newspapers, many newspapers, it was front page, and the news, the evening news in Canada, it was first item. You know what I mean? And and I didn't expect that.
No, I
Um,
wouldn't
I,
either.
I was hoping for some media coverage, and I just didn't think that much about it. Everything was just go go go. You know what I mean? And so it was a good start though, and the stores it sold very very well in stores. In fact, I had store owners actually phoning me at my office and saying, "I'm sold out, and the darn distributors won't send me anymore because back then when they came around with the magazines and the comic books, they had a
Mhm.
route and they delivered them, and they're not going to run back with 10 more copies to one store. You know what I mean? It just doesn't make sense financially, kind of thing.
Of course.
And but yeah, it was pretty good.
Mhm.
The first issue uh, went over very well. So
Yes, and then over the issues, I did read that there were a bit of a time gap between
oh yeah.
issues. What
Yeah.
what was the main cause of that?
Well, I was doing everything myself. I was a
Mhm.
one man show. And
One man.
yeah, I swept the floors at the end of the day, you know. But it was a combination of not enough money and not enough helpers. So when I finished number one, I was almost finished number two. George Freeman just dropped into my office, and when I saw his work, I just I literally felt this is a godsend. You know what I mean? He drew better than I did, and I just loved his artwork. And so he came on, and then about he was at the time he was working as a tombstone engraver, and I remember, yeah, I was looking for him. I was looking for him. He left, he came, he dropped by, we had a lovely little visit, he left, and a few days later I'm thinking, he didn't leave me any contact information, so I tried for days to get a hold
Yeah.
of him. So I'm phoning Tombstone Engravers. Do you have a guy named George Freeman who works there? I never did find that. But anyways, then about oh 3 months later, Jean-Claude Saint-Aubin got on a bus in Montreal, came to Winnipeg. I came home. Probably it was about 5, 6 in the evening, and Jean-Claude was playing catch with my little brother who was staying with us, my wife and I,
Hmm.
and he introduced himself, very thick French accent, limited English. I come to help you with the comic book, So what can I say? But yeah, so it was, we became a threesome, and so life got a lot easier for me. There was a lot of things that I needed to do. I was trying to sell ad space and trying to get deals, for, uh, well, product, Captain Canuck product that we would sell, and then eventually we got a license. So to keep things going, um, there was a lot of other stuff that had to be done besides just writing and drawing the comic book.
Of course. Yeah, and that's a problem. So I guess from what I'm hearing, that it was a one man band. Do you think that maybe reaching out to comic book stores that would have helped a bit at the time, or to in order to boost demand? And
Well, I mean, I did reach out to the comic book stores, and it was an easy job back then because there was only a few. So,
yeah, of
and
course.
so, but in fact, I went to New York City. I went to Brooklyn in New York City, and talk about accents. I'll tell you, I had to listen careful. Um, but I met with a guy by the name of Phil Suling, who is a
Hmm.
bit of a pioneer in the direct market for comic books.
Okay.
I think he's might be the first distributor, uh, and he bought like 5,000 copies. Now, mind you, our print run was 200,000, so I had a lot of copies that had to be moved. The distributor only distributed 120,000 copies at the beginning, uh, and then we ended up bagging comics, um, which we sold to jobbers at a deeply discounted price, kind of thing. So there was a lot, but yeah, I did reach out. The only store I was aware of was the one in Winnipeg. There was one in Toronto, but I never really was able to kind of make contact with that store. I think they ended up, selling some of our issues, but I never really knew. Because Toronto, I was in Winnipeg. Toronto driving is about 24 hours of
Ooh.
solid driving to go from
Yeah.
Winnipeg to Toronto.
Mm. So I guess, like, if it fast forwarded to today, it would be a lot easier for you to get this contact. I guess
Oh
we,
yeah,
we don't yeah, we don't really understand how important communication is, especially in the social media industry, because
yeah,
where all those comic book stores, you could have contact. Maybe if there's like 2,000 stores in Canada, you could have reached out to them all in one click of a button. Like,
yeah.
it's crazy. It's
Well,
crazy how it's changed.
what we did recently is and it took a bit of work, some with the internet and phone calls, etc. We got the contact information, the address, the phone number, the email for nearly all the stores in Canada. And
Hmm.
and there's only about 250 stores in all of Canada. In the States, there's maybe 2,200, something like that. Now, there's some stores that do sell some comic books, but they're not in it enough to be viable as far as make doing a lot of work, communicating with them. And but there are some publishers that have worked hard to you know make contact with all the retailers, the comic book specialty stores, and
Yeah.
sell directly to them rather than just relying on Diamond, for example,
Mhm.
Diamond distributors. So um but yeah, today the other thing that I see people doing, a lot of people, is crowdfunding their comic book
Yeah,
projects. And it's a good way to go. You know what I mean? It's a sensible way to go about it.
exactly. Because like you're struggling earlier on to get issues 3, 4, 5. Whereas crowdfunding, you could be funding 3 while you're making issue number 4.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
that could be
yeah,
the way to do it. But And just tell us about like after issue number 14, you took a bit of a hiatus. Was
Yeah.
during those years, was Captain Canuck in your mind? Was that like a lost relationship that you needed to get back in contact with? Tell us about that.
Well, um, after issue number 14, I was not the investors that had come on, and I were
Hmm.
not seeing eye to eye, and things ended with me and them, and then the company just stopped, uh,
Hmm.
s- stopped producing. It went out of are no longer exist. In fact, those two investors are long gone too. But so I did another magazine. I did Star Rider and the Peace Machine, but then basically I went back to working as a commercial artist, and I did children's books. I did a lot of advertising. We then in '85 we moved to Ontario from Alberta, from Calgary, Alberta. We moved to close to Toronto. Toronto is the biggest city in Canada, and this is where this is a good place to be for somebody like me. This is where the publishing and everything is centered in Canada, or most of it, anyways.
Yeah.
So we came out here. I was basically working as a freelance commercial artist, and again, I was doing children's books. I did quite a few children's books for Grolier, who had offices in Toronto at the time. And then I did, for a few years, I did almost nothing but greeting cards, hundreds of greeting cards. And and then I was doing advertising, and then I did some storyboarding and just a bunch of things. I have eight
Hmm.
children, so I had to constantly be concerned about income
Of
and
course.
to feed a bunch of people. So I just did a number of things, and I'm not complaining. I was happy
Mhm.
to do the greeting cards. Um, I did a lot of children's books for Grolier. Grolier used to put out a lot of books that were sold via, they do the massive campaigns where, uh, they'd get people to buy one book and they get a book free. And then the idea was to sign them on to get all 27 books in the series.
Mhm.
So, um, and I don't know, think they still operate that way. Things have changed.
Yeah.
So, I hadn't forgotten about Captain Canuck, and it wasn't until, well, what got me going again was in the early 1990s. I could see that, well, there were a lot more comic book stores. The direct market was well entrenched by that
Yes.
time, and and there was probably more stores than there is now. I think
I think so
maybe
too.
I don't know when it would have peaked in the early '90s, the number, and then and then with conglomeration, and a lot of stores just sort of going out of business, people retiring, etc. You've got what you've got today. But it was the fact that I was seeing really some really big numbers from some of the publishers. I think the early '90s, you saw some big numbers as far as sales. People selling a million copies. Yeah, or and somebody I know by the name of Todd McFarlane. I think you might know who Todd
I
McFarlane
think
is.
I think I've heard of the guy. Yeah, yeah.
So I saw Todd do really well with Spider-Man, and then of course with Spawn.
Mhm.
Now I knew Todd from 81, 82, 83, and that
Wow.
time frame. At the time, he was taking graphic design in Spokane, Washington, which isn't
Mhm.
too far from southern Alberta. His parents were living in Calgary at the time. So he
Mhm.
would come and see me Easter, Christmas, different holidays. I'd see him probably at least four times a year. and I had two other young artists coming to see me. I'm about 10 years older than Todd. And
Mhm.
he would come, he wanted advice, he wanted feedback, just trying to get a foothold in the business. So, um, and he did eventually, a very good foothold. So, uh, I used to teach. I used to teach night courses, in illustration and cartooning here in Ontario. So I used to tell my students, I said, Todd McFarlane, not everybody knew who he was, but I told them I would tell them who he was. I said, Todd would show me his work, and I'd say, Todd, please work on your hands. Please, the feet, you got to work on your feet. Todd, I don't like your cartoony faces. I mean, they don't work for me. And I would tell my class, this is what I would tell Todd. Now, my advice, uh, my advice did not aid him in becoming a millionaire. It did at the same time. It didn't hold him back either. So, um, anyways, um,
Oh,
it
that's a
was
lovely story.
yeah. So, but it was that's what was going on, and I just I found another backer, and so I started in '93 with Captain Canuck Reborn, and
Mm-hmm.
I and that's let me show you that
Oh,
zero.
sorry, just let me move the screen a bit so I can see better.
Yeah. So that's number zero. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
number
wow.
zero.
Beautiful.
And number two, this is number two. This is from 93, 94 in that area.
Yeah.
And this is oh, sorry, I showed out of order. This is number one. One of the covers for number one. And this was the last of that series, Captain Connect Reborn. And this issue has two stories from the daily newspaper strip I was doing. So you can
Nice.
see. So there's eight days of strip right there, and the newspaper strip, it was a continuity strip, and so
Mm-hmm.
was it? I think five stories got told over the almost 2 years that it ran. So and then I just wasn't making enough money from it, and it just so I quit. I quit doing it after almost 2 years of doing it. So
Mm-hmm.
probably a year and three quarters, that kind of thing. But interestingly, we Lev Gleason is going to publish a, a trade paperback that collects all the newspaper comic strips, starting with the very first one I did for a newspaper in 1976. And
Mm-hmm.
then we did a couple of limited series in out of Calgary, and um, and then of course the strip from in '95 and '96. So it's all being collected into uh, one book that'll come out. I'm not sure if it's coming out in the fall or next spring, but it's done. It's ready almost.
Ooh.
Yeah. I went through all the art. I had it toned. I cleaned up art. Blah blah
Mhm.
blah. So it'll look even better than it did in the newspapers. So
Beautiful. Beautiful. And look, I just want to go back to the original number one back in 1975. The art style I find was quite interesting. That you had the comic book esque kind of art style, and then you used like what looks to be photo images.
yeah,
Where did that
yeah,
idea come from? Because I've seen Jack Kirby do a little bit of it, but not to this sort of degree. Tell
yeah.
us about where the idea came from.
Well, I'm brand new at it. You got to remember this. So it's like I'm not playing by any rules that anybody's taught me. So it's not like so, and I mean, I just found some good photos that worked with my story. So, and it just
Wow.
saved me. It saved me work. Let's
Yeah.
paste up this photo instead of having to draw all this stuff. And so that was a big part of it. And I thought, hey, nobody else is doing this. This is going to going to set me apart from the rest of the crowd. So
Yeah, because I was I was truly surprised. And I only read it like maybe a week ago. I read issue number one, and I was just like blown away. And this is a new reader. Like I've known of your character. I've read the chapter house stuff to death, but
yeah.
just having this for the first time was actually a pleasant surprise. And just forgive my ignorance, but did you use this style in the next few issues as well, or was this just a one?
No, I don't think past about. I think there. Yeah, I know I used it in number two. I used a few photos in number two and three, but less and less. But then I
Mhm.
had George. By issue number three, I had George do it. Well, he did the inking, and then number four, he did the penciling. So it was almost like I don't need this anymore. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
I probably should have kept it up just to
I think so.
kind of keep us uh, kind of
Originality.
more special, than the other publishers. But
Yeah, no, I
so
really
and
appreciate it.
I can't look at the first few issues anymore. I mean, they just oh my goodness, it's pretty rough.
Yeah,
Yeah,
isn't it true we are our own worst critics sometimes?
yeah. Well, like I said, and I was still new at it.
Of course. And then let's fast forward to 2015 when Chapter House had taken on your character. Calman, I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name, but his version of Captain Canuck, I think for me was almost the book that blew me away in 2015. I read it on a
Yeah,
free comic book day and was just like, I'm done. Like,
yeah, yeah,
that was interesting. So please, how did it feel for you to have your character taken in this way in a very modern set and very action packed? I absolutely
yeah.
loved it.
Yeah, Kelman was a great find. You know what I mean? Now, it
Mhm.
wasn't me who hired Kelman. It was Fatty at Lev Gleason. It was Chapter House at that time,
Yeah,
and
Chapter House.
it's now Lev Gleason. But Lev Gleason Comic House. He found that Comic House made more sense than using Chapter House. But no, Calvin did it well. First of all, he designed a new costume which well, a lot of people really like it. That's the old costume. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a new costume, but that's another artist. This isn't Kalman's art. Um, that's Kalman. That's Kalman. That's his first cover, and
Mhm.
everybody loves his cover.
Me
We've
too.
yeah no it's people look at it and say it looks there's a bit of Iron Man there. There's a bit of military look there. You know what I mean? Uh, yeah, it looks good. So
Yeah.
and quite different from everything
Mhm.
else out there.
Yeah, and one story in this that really surprised me was Marcus Toe. And that style that we see right here was a more
Yeah,
traditional look. He's got a bit of gruff on his
that's
chin.
Marcus. What you have up right now, I believe, is Marcus Toe, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I absolutely love this story. I thought like it was nice to go to the original costume and this sort of layout.
yeah.
Did did you like? How was your like initial reaction when you saw this presented to you, just as
Well,
a creator?
yeah, I mean, they kind of made a big deal out of it. I had to go. Yeah, I'm about a little over an hour away from Toronto, and so
Hmm.
I go in, and Kalman worked at a studio with about seven other artists. They all shared the space, and
Hmm.
Kalman said that he worked better there than he did all up by himself at home. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And a lot of other artists feel the same way. So we went there. I met Kalman, and then it was kind of a reveal. You know what I mean? Here it is. Ta-da! And I mean, I was impressed with the art and the look right away. You know what I mean? I there was no complaining on my part, and so yeah, it was good. And Kalman is a really smart guy, and he writes well too. You know what I mean? He's a good writer and a good artist. Um, so yeah, it was all and all the other artists too. I mean, I've said this. before, especially in this part of the country, is that we have a lot of the top artists in the industry living in Ontario. Give me some. I mean, there's so many. Stuart Inneman, um,
Yes, great artist.
uh, who is one of my favorite artists. Of course, oh boy, names aren't coming to me. Of course, um, um, David Finch. Is it
Oh, of
Finch?
course, yeah. I've met David
Yeah.
Finch, and I got him to sign the Finch. He actually did a cover for Captain Canuck, and I actually got him to sign it
Yes.
when I was in
Yes.
Boston.
Oh, we've
Yeah,
used that cover over and over again. Everybody
I
likes
know, it's
that,
a
loves that
beautiful
cover.
cover.
I, I'm going to tell you something too. He did not. He gave us that cover. He did not. He did not
Commission.
charge for it. If we would have had to pay, it would be in a couple of $1,000s. And
Mhm.
that's the kind of guy he is. You know what I mean? He just here, no charge, and
Yeah, he probably drew because he wanted to draw it. Yeah, some artists
yeah.
just want to
I mean,
draw.
yeah. He's a big name artist. Um, Still a very nice, humble guy. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And he's got too many. He's got too many big companies chasing him to do their. We can't pay what they pay. You know what I mean? Kind of thing. And he
Mhm.
knows it, and he's just
Yeah,
being very kind and generous. So
yeah.
he
But
doesn't. He doesn't. Go
sorry, I
ahead.
was just going to ask, as a father of Captain Canuck, how does it feel when you have these people just, I understand they're making a fuss, but they're trying to impress you. So how does it feel, at this stage in your life and you're seeing the character out there, more people around the world are getting access to it. How does that make you feel? Do you feel humble, or where does your heart lie in all of
Well,
that?
I'm not walking around with my nose in the air,
I know. I know.
but no, I'm happy to see, and all these guys are younger than me too. Um,
Mhm.
and Kalman and David and all the rest. They're all younger artists, and so I almost have this paternal instinct towards them. You know what I mean? I see them every now and then at cons, of course. You know what I mean? And I know them
Yeah.
and happy to see them and chat with them for a minute. And but a lot of them are. I have sons that are in their 40s, and a lot of these guys are in that age range too. So
Yeah.
um, I just kind of pat them on the head and say thank you and go my way. Yeah. I don't pat them on the head. I'm just kidding.
I know. But still, it's pretty funny. But have there's been any stages, any time in your career where you had something put in front of you and you were like, no, I'm not happy with this,
Oh
and
yeah.
yeah, and I mean, just tell us a bit about that, because obviously there'll be some creators out there who might come across the same thing. How would be the best way to combat that
Well,
that
obviously
comes
you got
up?
to be super diplomatic. You know,
Yeah.
I've often had this experience because I'm a commercial artist. I'll have people come up to me maybe at church or somewhere, and they'll say, "Oh, my Johnny, he's an amazing artist." You know what I mean? And then later on, I'll see their work, and it's not amazing art, but to the parent or to the related person, it's amazing that they could do this. But and I had some friends over. Well, many years ago, we had some friends from. We're Latter Day Saints, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter Day Saints, and you
Yeah.
have Latter Day Saints in Australia too.
Yeah,
So
we do.
and so we had a couple of families come over, and they're Filipino families.
Mhm.
And I remember her name is Sally said to me, her brother Lorenzo, she said he's a really good artist. And when she said that to me, I kind of had that same, yeah, okay, I'm sure.
I
You know what
heard
I mean?
that many
But
times.
yeah. But a few days later, I was walking past her place and I saw Larry and Sally outside, and I stopped to say hello. And Sally said, "Oh, let me go get some of Larry's drawings. While you're here." And she came out with it and opened up the it was like a sketchbook, I think it
Yeah.
was, and I went, what? Like it was really really good, and he worked in a car part. He worked at a Toyota plant,
Yeah.
and
Wow.
he was really a talented artist, but he just he was a very quiet, unassuming kind of guy, and to you need to be able to hustle when you're working as an artist, for example. You're out there hustling for work constantly. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and he just wasn't interested in doing that. He wanted a job that paid decent money and was stable, and so
Hmm.
he didn't have enough passion to take that route, and there's nothing wrong with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He was just thinking very kind of sensibly about how he should proceed. So
Yeah, and that's right. It's good to have that sort of side hustle, but also have the real hustle where the income comes in. But if the art
yeah,
can take you that route, then obviously you take it. But you got to be lucky sometimes,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a number of different fields in commercial art. For example, I mean, I started out as a crest designer. After a while, I did embroidery design and then styling for a while, mostly women's outerwear and boutique wear. I did that for a little while, and
Oh wow.
so, and then I did portraits for a while, caricatures and portraits. That's
Hmm.
how I met my wife. I was doing that at a big department store in Winnipeg, Manitoba, which is where we both lived at the time. So, and like I said, I've done all kinds of stuff because I can't say, oh no, I'm only going to do this kind of stuff. I didn't have the what's the word? I mean, I just wasn't able to
Yeah,
specialize in one area. I couldn't generate enough income
yeah.
or
You
find
gotta be
enough work.
specific.
For a while, I would, like when I did greeting cards, I had enough work that I could focus almost entirely on that for,
Mhm.
I don't know, a couple of years. And even with children's books, for a couple of years, I did so many of them. That was my number one source of income, but it didn't last. You know what I mean? It kind of petered out, and I had to find another, source of income.
Hmm. And let's talk to us about the stamps. You actually had Captain Canuck on a stamp collection, would also
Yeah.
include Superman. How did that? How did you feel about that when these got released?
Well, they phoned me. Somebody phoned me about 2 years before the release. So in about '93, somebody from the post office phoned me and asked me if they could get the rights, etc. And of course, I was happy to.
Right.
They didn't pay a lot of money for the rights or the design. It wasn't a big money maker. I would have
Yeah.
made much more if this was in the States and it was in the American post office. But no, it was great. In fact, you notice Johnny Canuck there?
Hmm.
Johnny Canuck, after I published number two, the creator of Johnny Canuck phoned me and told me about Johnny Canuck which was published during World War II. I knew nothing about it until he gave me a phone call. And then I kind of felt like, why didn't I know about this? And in issue number three, there's an article about the comic books of World War II and particularly about Johnny Canuck. The creator is long dead, but nice guy. He worked as a comic book artist during World War II and just a little bit afterwards. And then primarily, he worked as an entertainer on cruise ships for 17 years after that. Him and his wife,
Yeah.
they were
Wow.
entertainers on cruise ships, and that's how they made their living.
Good golly. Well, I'm
Yeah,
learning so much today. Thank you.
yeah.
and and then later in 2018, you got your your $20 note. I don't know how you could fit that in your wallet, but
Yeah,
isn't that a beautiful
yeah.
sight to
It's
see?
only I've got one in the other room, but it's only about a little over an inch high. Well,
Oh,
what is
okay.
it? Yeah, it's not that big. I know it looks big when you look
Oh,
at it here. It's
Yeah.
maybe an inch and a quarter high. Looks good though. I mean, it's got color on it,
Oh yeah.
and and so again, they contacted me about 3 years before they released it.
Mm-hmm.
The and it sold out. It was sold out the day after it was released. So
Yeah.
they and you could buy them in Canada, where you buy stamps and where you go to, get your parcels weighed and post offices
Yeah. Post
here in
office.
Canada. Yeah, you could buy one of those coins. They would have them on display, along with some other coins and stamp collecting paraphernalia. And but they sold out everywhere. I learned
Oh.
later on that the big distributors would get to order even before they were open. It was released to the public. So a lot of them were already ordered by a lot of dealers who were they order them, and they wait for the sales in the post offices, etc., are finished, and then they put them online on eBay and stuff. You know what I mean, for a little more money. So.
Yeah, I could imagine. So, just overall, in terms of where you are and what and how you're seeing your baby, your character, Captain Canuck. Are you happy with the direction it's going at the moment with Liv Gleason
Yep.
over the years? Yeah.
Yeah. I am. I mean, I still do some drawing for it. I still do some writing for it.
Hmm.
I'm not. I'm
I'm
doing
glad.
there's little special projects, for example. Mostly. Fatty came along. I first met Fatty in 2009, and
Hmm.
he phoned me up or emailed me or both. He wanted to name a sandwich the Captain Canuck, and that's why he was calling me. And then we got to know each other, and he had all these other ideas, and eventually, by 2013, we you know we basically made an agreement together, and he created a company, and he basically started the ball rolling. He very passionate about it all, and
Hmm.
he's told me that when he was 6 years old, his father gave him some money and told him he could buy anything he wanted with it. He went into a little flea market and he bought that first issue of Captain Canuck. And it's
Oh,
yes. So I've often isn't there some animals in nature, the first thing they see sort of is embedded in their brain and they follow it forever, kind of thing.
yeah.
Um, I can't remember what animals that is. Maybe it's different ones, but so no, it's Fatty has been, he's worked hard at it. The animated web series, all
Yeah.
produced by, and well done, and won an award, and the publishing is a very difficult business, and
Hmm.
he's navigated his way through that, and now we're looking uh, to animation for television. That's in the works.
Hmm.
We've got companies who want to make a movie. So we're headed in the right direction. We're going where we need to go with this. So
Hmm. And I heard, like, I could be hearing something in the grapevine, but a movie potentially. Is that
yes,
something that could happen?
yes. Captain, I have optioned Captain Canuck at least 4 times over the years,
Hmm.
and one of those agreements was actually a co-production agreement. And you know, the, typically with intellectual properties, um, like Captain Canuck, you either when producers approach you, it's typically an option agreement. And yeah, to explain what an option agreement is they give you some money, usually not very much, but to hold the rights for a period of time, while they pull it all together. You know what I mean? They get the script, the cast, the financing lined up, all of that stuff, and then they've got a period of time which they need to green light, basically a go, and then the rest of the agreement kicks in. Well, We won't, haven't gotten to that point yet. But we have companies right now, on some that I had talked who I had agreements with in the past, and some newer companies that have been approaching us, and now we're just trying to sort it out. But we're still, even if things went super fast, it'll still be a couple of years before we see something. I think,
Okay.
it'll probably be 2 years, maybe a year and a half if things went just swimmingly well and fast. But I doubt that's going to happen.
I've got a tough question for you. Who would you have portray Tom Evans? Who would play Captain Canuck?
I mean, I you know I really don't have one person in mind. Um, there's a lot of course, we'd love to have somebody who's Canadian. I think that would be kind of a given. And of
Not
course,
so fast.
there's a number of Canadians who have made it big
Oh,
in
yeah.
Hollywood. And of course, Ryan,
Of course. Ryan Reynolds.
Ryan Reynolds. I mean, he's already been a couple different superheroes. He's and big name, and then there's the other Ryan Gosling. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, and then uh, there's lots of other little bit lesser known actors who I think would work better. Um,
Yeah. Or even
there's
you
lots. There's lots of people. Yeah, we might do like like the Superman
yeah.
actor,
Christopher Reeve.
Reeves. I mean, he did soap operas, and nobody knew who he was, kind of thing. And
Strange. Yeah, that's true.
so that could be a good route to go.
Mm-hmm.
So
And just have like a big name villain,
yeah,
like a big name actor to play the villain. That would
yeah,
be a way to go.
yeah. No, I think that could work.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not quite there yet.
Of course.
So,
And just tell us about your website here. So you got your comedyart.com.
yep.
How when did this site come into production? When did you start to showcase your other talents of painting and things like
Um,
that?
so it wasn't. It's only months ago that I put it up,
Oh
and
wow.
yeah, it's only been up months, and some of that art is very old. But so I was in contact with an agency in the United States who
Mm-hmm.
got back to me and said, if you had a bunch of artwork on a website and you could sign an agreement with an organization in the States that would make this artwork available to European publishers on a bulk licensing agreement.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't make as much, you know what I mean? But it's and I've got a bunch of Captain Canuck stuff up there. A lot of it was because they said you got to have a lot of stuff, a lot of images on your website. You know what I mean? And a variety too, a wide variety. So that's what the main purpose of that website is, to display a variety of artwork that might be of interest to various publishers, and that
Mm-hmm.
could be online, or book publishers, or whatever, you know what I mean? And then hopefully that, eventually, I still have to get some more images on there, but we'll start doing a little bit of licensing with it. So, some of these images will appear, uh, in Europe in books, or on websites or whatever, and they'll be licensed through this bulk licensing arrangement.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the
Yeah,
number one purpose. Yeah.
of course. And it's comedyart.com if you're interested in checking this out, because it really is something to be seen, I must say.
Oh, thank you.
If as soon as I saw this image, I actually didn't click on it. But I was like, "Gosh, that guy looks familiar." And when I clicked on it, I was like, "Yes, I thought so."
This is a long time ago. Keto is much older now. He's this
Yeah,
this is this is what he looked like maybe 20, 30 years ago, I think. So
yeah, definitely in the 90s. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But no, but oh, Richard, it's been an absolute honor meeting you today.
Thank you.
It really has, and I'm very appreciative of your insight, and also you really did just, a lot of words of wisdom came through today, and I really appreciate it. But I know coming soon will be the 50th anniversary of Captain Canuck.
Yeah.
What are we going to expect at that time? Can you give us any hints or any little teasers?
Well, yeah, there'll be books. There'll definitely be books that'll come out. New books, new trade paperback. There'll be um, there'll be some events that will take place in Canada here, and we'll probably be doing some special attractions at some Comic Cons here in Canada, maybe even in the States too. We're
Yeah.
we're doing, we've done a lot of comic book conventions in the past, before COVID, and now we're
Mhm.
starting to do some more again, and we're doing more US ones now. We kind of feel that would be a good way to go, because actually there's more comic books, there's more copies sold in the States than in Canada now, and
Oh,
that has a lot to do with the larger population and the larger number of stores. You know what I mean? So it's not like on a per capita basis, but so I think there's a good chance that there could be another stamp and another coin come out. So
okay. Yeah.
probably more so the coin than maybe the stamp. But so and then by then there'll definitely be the animated series on TV. It'll be out, and maybe even the film will happen that year. That's probably about the timing, that will work.
Fine.
Give us enough, yeah. So yeah, 50
And,
years.
of course, and it's hard to believe, but it is
Yeah,
creeping up. It is
yeah,
creeping up now because you celebrated the 45th anniversary only 2 years ago, and
yeah,
we're 3 years from 50.
yeah.
What would you like to see in a new Captain Canuck story? Would you ever like to see him, say, team up with another character from another publisher? What would be your dream project that you'd like to either work with or just to oversee?
Well, so many people, especially when we go to the States, say, when's Captain Canuck going to team up with Captain America? Kind of thing. Well, Disney owns Captain America now, and that the likelihood is even less of that happening. But um, and I definitely would not be interested in having Alpha Flight and Captain Canuck team up. You know what I mean? It's just that I've been so frustrated at many cons where people coming up to me and saying, "How come or when did you let Marvel use Captain Canuck in Alpha Flight?" And of course, their character has a very similar costume to Captain Canuck, and it caused a lot of confusion. And I should have, years ago, when the first issue came out, I should have written a letter or had a lawyer write a letter to Marvel saying it's confusing, it's too close, you got to make some changes. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
and I didn't do that. You know what I mean? And but so as far as what would I like to see, um, I mean, there's a lot of characters that I could see. I mean, with Marvel and DC, those big companies can be hard to work with when you're a little guy.
of course.
But yeah, but there's different characters. I mean, of course, I'd love to see Captain Canuck and Spider-Man or Superman work together, or Batman. Any one of those would be
Mm,
great. Any one of those major characters would be great. There's
yeah.
other characters that are lesser known in both Marvel and DC that would be great too. So
hmm Uh, Again, Richard, it's been an absolute honor. And just spell it out for the fans. When can we see or hear from you again in terms of the conventions, or if you want to spruce your website, the floor's all yours.
All right. Well, I'll mention again Ron's Toon a Day. That's TOONADAY.com. Anybody listening would love his website, toonaday.com. Of course, we already talked about comelyart.com. More images, as I mentioned, are going to get added to that for primarily for licensing purposes. We are I believe the next con. I'm doing a few smaller cons here in Canada, basically for friends. You know what I mean? Here in Ontario, we're just Comic Cons are just starting to come into flow again. But Fatty and I are going to be guests at one in New Jersey, the Garden State Comic Fest, I believe it's called. We've never done one in New Jersey, so and they got funny accents there too, of course. So that'll be interesting. Um, so we're looking forward to that, and then of course we'll be at the big one in Toronto. That's the biggest one in Canada, the one that's in the fall and is the end of August in Toronto. And I'm pretty sure we're going to be doing a few others. I think we're going to be doing Ottawa again this year. These are cons that we've done before, and so we'll be there. And there'll be Lev Gleason stuff that I'm working on. We're going to put out Captain Canuck number 16, and I've written another chapter to add to it, so it's going to get. I've got to finish that, and it's. I don't know when it'll be published. It's going to be probably just. It won't be. I don't know if it's going to be released through Diamond. I don't think it is. It's going to be one of those exclusive only through Lev Gleason issues. But 15 did well. This is 15 of the original series.
Yeah, that's what I was hoping.
Yeah.
You got to say that.
Yeah.
Because there's a bit of a trend of that happening, especially with Marvel. Have done it a few years back, just having an extra issue based on a story that happened 30 years past. So I really like that. I think it's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. So that's and the other thing that I'm working on is we're going to publish as a trade paperback the 4 issues of the Reborn series. They'll all be put together into a trade paperback.
Fantastic.
So that's coming. I don't know when that will get. That will probably be maybe fall or spring again. I think that one, spring next year. I think that's when those will come out. So.
Again, Richard, it's been an absolute honor. Thank you for joining us. And I want to thank everyone. And I just want to thank everyone for watching Thinking the Extra from Comic Crusaders. Please click like and subscribe to get more amazing content. And also check out comiccrusaders.shop. And this is Dodgy from Thinking the Extra. I'll see you all next time.
Thank you. We hope you've enjoyed this Comic Crusaders production. For real-time news on all things pop culture, please feel free to follow us on social media. For articles, original content, merchandise, and more, please go to www.comiccrusaders.com. Also follow along with all of the websites of the Comic Crusaders family. As always, if you like this content, please click like and subscribe to the Comic Crusaders YouTube channel.